What's up, everyone? Josh Smith here. Hey, thank you for joining us today. We're talking about loans to pay for college. For those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Josh Smith. I'm the founder of A Grade Above College Planning. Our goal is to educate, empower parents to really make smart decisions when it comes to college, whether that be financial aid tactics, scholarship tactics, admission, student positioning strategies, and college funding, right? All those things come into play when it comes to reducing your out-of-pocket expenses paying for school. So if you've been here before, welcome back. Thank you for being here. If you're joining us live, I appreciate you joining us live. And if you're watching the recording, also thank you for watching this recording. Now, the question is, and the reason why this is actually the question, and I feel like it's kind of timely for many parents with I would say rising freshmen in college, maybe rising seniors in high school. I speak to a lot of parents on a regular basis, and most parents are trying their hardest to avoid student loans, right? Avoid student loans, and rightfully so. And I think you should avoid drowning in student loan debt. This is not a video to try to convince you otherwise that, hey, you need to take out loans and drown in debt. That is not the case. But what I really want you to understand from a different perspective is, are loans really that bad? Right? What makes a loan bad? And it may not be what you think. It may not be just interest rates, or it may not be just the term. And you also may not know all the options that are available to you as a parent or as a family looking to pay for school. Now, this information, this video, this live, this is ideally for parents in a unique situation where you may not make enough to get a lot of financial aid, right? Or any financial aid, depending on where your student is going to school. But you also have a pretty good income to where you might want to pay some money out of pocket, or pay some money, with your income, your cash, or your savings, and or you're faced with the opportunity of taking out student loans. So we want to talk about the alternative to loans, and that perspective is, should you use loans, or maybe should you pay from your income or your savings? And what is the impact that either choice could actually have long term? So even though college is maybe only 4 or 5 years, maybe up to 6 years, depending on where your student goes to school and who your student might be as far as a student, right? Are they going to get done? Or are they going to, be there for a little longer? The important thing to understand is college is considered a major capital purchase. So a major capital purchase, by our definition, is anything that you either have to save money for or you have to borrow for. You typically just can't pay out of pocket, whether it be like an annual payment, either your own payment plan, maybe, I'm paying every month, but your cash flow, your income doesn't just, pay for it all out of pocket. So it's considered a major capital purchase. And what most major capital purchases, you sometimes want to pay over maybe 4 or 5+ years just to be able to have normal, reasonable payments where you don't have to modify your lifestyle. So we're going to look at this from maybe a major capital purchase viewpoint. And I kind of want to maybe just shed some light on certain things that you may be thinking, and maybe give you a different way of looking at this to improve your overall financial well-being, not just today with college, but also long term. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. But also, before I do share my screen, if you haven't already, you can hit that like button, subscribe button. It definitely is appreciated, and it goes a long way helping the channel, helping me spread the word to more people. And if you have any questions, please add them to the chat or to the comments, and I'll do my best to either respond to you right away or very soon after I do the recording. But anyhow, let me go ahead and share my screen and actually remove myself, because most of you are not here to see me. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of we're going to do a little bit of math and kind of understand how would you like to pay for it. So when we talk about loans, right, we're going to assume, whether it be 4 years, 4 years at $25,000 a year, or maybe 5 years at $20,000 a year, but we're going to assume it's about $100,000 that you have to pay when it comes to college. And maybe you have money saved. Maybe you have the ability to use your savings or your income. But let's talk about $100,000. Now, here's some of the reasons why most people would want to avoid using loans. If we look at a 5-year outlook, right, 5 years on about $100,000, our total cost for having this loan is right around $134,000. Now, how do we come to that conclusion? Well, We all know at a 6% interest rate, and these are the numbers that I'm using for simple math, and I know interest rates can vary, right? You might be at maybe a little lower, you might be looking at higher student loans, federal loans, however you want to look at it. We're just using for the sake of this presentation, we're going to use 6% at 100,000 at 6%. So interest over 5 years, you're looking at about close to $16,000, right? Cumulative interest over 5 years, interest paid. Now, this is one of the big reasons why, just by itself, why it will make sense to not use student loans, especially if you have the ability to pay for school from your income or your savings, right? But again, is that the wise or the smartest way to go about doing it? Now, the interest that you have to pay on this $100,000 is not actually the only cost. Now, we're going to talk about the interest, right, on the interest. So if you notice this $1,900, this is basically an amortization schedule or amortized payment where every payment is going towards principal and interest. And then every year you get to a point to where eventually over 5 years you pay off the whole loan. But when you're making those payments, the 1933, that payment consists again of interest and principal. So we're looking at the opportunity costs, right, of those payments. If you have the ability to save that same amount of money at whatever, let's say a 6% interest rate, you're missing out because you're making payments to pay off this particular loan. So I know as I'm speaking, I'm preaching to the choir, but just stay with me and you'll be able to see kind of maybe this from a different lens or a different perspective. But I know many of you already know this. So interest, opportunity costs at interest, or interest on the interest. Now the principal on the interest, right? Because you're making principal payments. And then your total cost of purchase, right? The total cost of ownership using a $100,000 loan at 6% over 5 years comes out to be right around 134, almost 135,000, because of the interest you had to pay, the principal you had to pay back, plus the opportunity cost on those things for 5 years. Now, if I were to increase it from 5 years, spread it out over 10 years, it just continues to grow and gets bigger and bigger. Now, these are all the reasons why it would make sense and why most people want to avoid using loans for major purchases, especially if you have the cash, right, or the income. Now, when we look at the cash or the income, if we jump ahead, here's one thing that we want to think about. That same $100,000 that you may have saved, if you're earning 6% on your dollar, which many people have the ability to do, especially long term, and you're not making any additional contributions to that, the interest that you would have earned over 5 years is that $34,885, right? You've been able to accumulate, grow, interest, principal, all those things, opportunity costs that you're minimizing. Your total balance over 5 years from your $100,000 saved at 6% is the exact same, right, that it would have cost you by borrowing and using a loan. The whole point, this is a huge deal that I really am trying to emphasize here, is that it costs you the same. Whether you use a loan or you pay cash, if you are paying the same amount that you are earning, it actually costs you the same. Now, when we talk about loans, there's this huge negative connotation about loans, and this is why loans are not good. This is why you should avoid it at all costs. Now, we're going to talk about why loans could be bad, but it's not really for those reasons, right? It's not just the interest rate or the terms. A lot of times, a loan becomes bad when you don't have the right strategy to offset what you may be paying. Now, in this particular case, if somebody were to use cash, what else are they losing? Because it costs them the same as if they were to borrow at 6%, but they're losing control over their money. Let's say you get sick, you can't go to work every day. There's a disability, you lose your income, right? Maybe none of those things happen, and we don't want to prepare for a zombie apocalypse. But what if there's an opportunity, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to invest in something that can be can pay huge dividends, maybe 20, 30, 40, 50%. Well, if you don't have the cash, you have a harder time of being able to take advantage of those opportunities. But if you can pay, if you can pay 6% or the same, whatever that percentage is that you have the ability to earn on your money, it actually costs you the same, but by using your own money, you lose that money. You lose what that money can do for you. So a lot of times people don't really understand this, but even if you had $200,000 saved and you only needed 25, maybe 50,000, if your interest rate was higher on that $50,000 that you needed compared to the interest rate that you may be earning on 200 grand, sometimes it still will make sense to borrow because the compounding effect on a larger amount can actually equate to more than you would ever need to pay off that $50,000 loan when the time is right. But the whole point that I'm making is when you're paying a price, you're not just paying that price, you are also potentially losing the opportunity cost for what that money could have done for you had you kept it in your investments or your accounts. Now, there's a lot of people that would say, hey, you know, my savings, my investments, my 529, 6% is low. I've earned, you know, well over, you know, 10% or 8%. Well, let's think about that. If you had the opportunity to earn more than 6%, let's say you earn 10%, right? This is the opportunity cost that you're losing. So it costs you $64,000 to lose, or to, excuse me, to use that $100,000. It's even worse. The higher return that you have the ability to receive on your money, the worse it is, the increased opportunity cost that you're seeing by using that cash. Now, loans are not the enemy. The enemy is a lack of a strategy. Now, what if you can earn, right, 6% of your money? We go back to a more conservative number. And let's say for those of us here that are in our 40s, 50s, let's say we have the opportunity to, you know, have our money saving for, let's say 20, let's say we're 40 right now, we save for 25 years, right? We have 25 years, I'll just do this, before retirement. That $100,000 could have earned $346,000 just in interest. Just in interest. Think about how much that $100,000 purchase actually cost you. So the price was maybe 100 grand, but it cost you closer to 400,000, maybe about $350,000 in interest that you could have earned and or used for your retirement. Now, this is what we mean when we say you want to strategically fund or pay for college, or for the most part, any major purchase where you don't have to pillage or lose your retirement. We don't want you to have to work for an extra 15 years, for an extra 10 years, just because you had to pay for college. What if you can do both? What if you can pay for college and still remain on track, or even be in a better situation when it comes to retirement? And it's possible. But the point that I'm really trying to nail or emphasize is using cash, using your income and or your savings, is losing that cash and or that savings. It's gone forever. If you have the ability to earn the equivalent, the same amount of return as you are borrowing at, you can always use your savings, your investments, your return to write a check and just pay off that loan. You're never drowning in debt. Now, to take this a step further, if you're earning 6%, but let's say you only have to pay a 5% on a loan. Now you notice there's a spread, there's a little bit of a difference. You're earning, right? The total final balance at the end of 25 years is about 450,000 compared to just over 400,000 that loan cost you. So now you have a 1% positive spread. You are in a golden situation because it actually costs you a lot less to keep the money earning 6% than you had to deal with paying at 5%. Think about that for just, you know, I would say from a perspective, you know, viewpoint. But let's take it a little bit further. If you were earning 6%, right, and you had the ability to borrow at 5%, just the 1% spread, and you had the ability to, what if we remove the requirement of a loan repayment? Now, I know many of you may be, you know, either very interested in what I'm saying, or many of you may be checking out. Like, wait a minute. You know, at first I thought this guy was ridiculous when he started talking about loans and positive, you know, potentially being a good thing. But now he's saying, if I don't have to repay that loan, yes, I am saying that. It's saying that it is definitely possible for you to have a loan, right, that does not require payments. Does not require payments. If we remove that payment at 585, right, now we also know that loan is going to continue to grow, right? The balance, the final balance is going to continue to grow. You're looking at $300,000, $350,000, but still compared to your $440,000, which means that over 25 years, it's still a good idea to use the loan versus using your income or your cash, right? Does that make sense so far? If you did not have the ability, or you were not forced to repay that loan, and many of you may be asking how or why is that even so? Why is that possible? That's because bringing me to the next point. The type of loans that most parents use when it comes to paying for college are the wrong types of loans. Interest rates are well over 5%, well over 8%, sometimes over 10%. And then the repayment, the terms are not necessarily as favorable. What I'm suggesting is, why not use a loan where you had very low rates, 5% or less, right? And the payments were flexible, meaning they were optional. And the more correct terminology would be unstructured loan repayments, meaning you're not forced to actually have to make payments. Well, some of you may be saying, well, how is that even possible? How does the lender make money, and how do we, what's the catch? Well, the catch is these types of loans are collateral loans, meaning if you have $100,000 saved, let's say in your bank savings account, you go to the bank or another financial institution and say, hey, I already have about $100,000 saved. Would you be willing to let me borrow $20,000 at a reasonable or at a specified interest rate? Now, if you know you're earning 4%, 5%, maybe it's a high yield savings account, all right, with your bank, and you know that this other financial institution, this lender is willing to give you, let's say, a loan at 2%, maybe it's a short-term loan, at 2%, then now you're able to earn a 1% to 2% spread, right, based on what you already are earning on the full $100,000, and you're paying about 2% on just the $20,000 portion that you're borrowing. Now, the reason why you wouldn't have to make a repayment in this example, right, and this is just an example, is because that financial institution that lent you the money, they have your full $100,000 as collateral. So if something were to happen to you, or whatever investment or whatever you were trying to pursue did not work out, they have a lien on 20% of that $100,000, in this case $20,000, where they can actually collect their $20,000 plus whatever interest you had outstanding. So it's a win for them to do this, because it creates an opportunity where they can actually earn on that loan, but it's also more secure for them because they have the full asset as potential collateral, right? That can absorb the interest that may accrue on that $20,000 loan. So this is how you may have the ability to have unstructured loan repayments, where you have the option to pay it back, but not necessarily a requirement. And if you knew that your asset can appreciate at 6%, but you're only paying, let's say, 5%, or in this example from the bank or the loans, maybe 2 or 3%, where would you rather put your money on an ongoing basis? Are you going to put it to pay off the loan, right? And this, as you see on my screen, at 5%, or are you going to put it into your asset that can appreciate at 6%? Well, it makes sense. The math makes sense to say, put that additional contribution towards your 6% asset. And if you don't have to make payments on the 5% asset, let it continue to cook, because you already have a 1% spread where you can always write a check to just pay off that loan. Now, if you didn't have to make contributions down here, but instead you took that same amount that you were going to contribute to repay your loan, but then you added over here $585 a month during that same time frame, now we just jump up to a $850,000 balance that you could potentially use for any other purchases, any other expenses, maybe other children that you have to put through college, and your retirement. So you just absorb over $570,000 in interest on $100,000 that you decided to keep in your account, averaging about a 6% return over 25 years. Think about that for a second. Now, yes, your loan balance accrues, but if it's only at 348,000 and when you have 850,000 in your account, you can easily take care of the loan and still live off the remaining balance to supplement your retirement or help you with other major purchases or investment opportunities that you may see in the future, including medical expenses, right? You know, if there's a medical emergency, long-term care, whatever that might be, you at least have that money still available to you that you can use for anything that you need it for. So when it comes to loans, the question is, are loans really that bad? That was the initial question. And the answer is, not all loans are created equally. So the two keys that you really want to understand, as I pull my camera back up, is the strategy, the repayment strategy that you have on a specific loan. You should never take out a loan that there's no strategy for when it comes to the repayment, and if that repayment is going to be required. Now, in this particular case that you see on my screen, the repayment may or may not be required, but ideally you're using the type of loan where there is no requirement. It's unstructured. So number one, strategy. Number two, the type of loan. Collateral type loans are better than structured loans that require credit reporting, a FICO, and specific requirements that you have to meet before they can lend you the money and then require payments. So the best type of loans, and this is, and maybe we'll do a whole nother video on different options that you have available to you when it comes to collateral opportunities. But the idea is that if you use the right loan, right, and that's typically, that comes after having the right strategy, you are never drowning in debt. You're helping your children with college. You're taking care of school regardless of where they attend and how much it costs. You're not pillaging or using your cash, savings, or retirement to help make this dream a reality. You're not losing opportunity costs, and you're still able to capitalize in the future when it comes to your retirement and or your overall financial well-being. If you have questions, we got answers. Please, if you haven't already, comment below, chat below, reach out to us via email. I'll make sure my information is in the description, info@agreatabovecp.com. We'll love to share with you more detail how this works, how the math works, maybe how the numbers look for you, answer any questions that you may have. But this is truly mathematically a strategy where you can actually pay for college and potentially get all your money back or have all your money available for you when it comes to your retirement or other financial obligations that you may have in the future. Hopefully this information was helpful to you. Again, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching, and be on the lookout for the next video where I'll talk maybe about some of the options, the types of accounts and other benefits that you may want to look for when it comes to these collateralized type of loans, and not just the math that kind of goes into it, but loans in general I would say on their own, within itself, are not entirely bad, right? It's just how you use them and the type of loan that you choose to use makes all the difference. What you don't know can definitely cost you. We'll talk to you soon.